Part 3 of the Mazes and Minotaurs Player's Manual. Adventuring. Alright, so it's got rules for sailing ships, which some reviewers think is not really needed, but is needed because a lot of Mazes and Minotaurs adventures take place on a ship, or on a ship going to islands. But the rules are really simple, so it's not that hard to run. Now we get into feats of strength. Feats of strength is you roll a 1d10 and try to get less than your might modifier. So it's kind of hard to do. But these other skills, some of them, like swimming and climbing, you make an athletic prowess roll. And some of them, most of them, you make a danger evasion roll. So and your target is usually your encumbrance. You might have seen that the situation where the player wants to know what their target is, and the DM just says, just go ahead and roll, and they argue, and when they finally, the player rolls, he rolls a 2. Well, if you're playing Mazes and Minotaurs and a player tried that, I'd say, and he wants to know his target, I'd say, what's your encumbrance? Your encumbrance is your target for most of these. So, yeah, perception, it's a danger evasion roll. Stealth is a danger evasion roll. Survival is a physical vigor roll. That's an exception. And barbarians are the best class at making the physical vigor roll. Alright, and there's a reactions table for which you use your personal charisma roll. Then we get into character advancement and hit point and experience points. Different classes have different kinds of experience points. Warriors get glory points. Monsters, based on how physically powerful they are, they have a certain number of glory points that you get for defeating them. And the amount of glory points is intended to be divided among several warriors. So usually it's a lot of glory points. Now, some monsters have wisdom points, which is what magicians need. And the more magical the monster is, the more wisdom points you can get from it. But the wisdom points are given to each individual magician. Each of them gets the full amount of wisdom points, unlike the glory points, which are divided among the warriors. At one point, my players figured out how to game the system, and they only had one warrior, and everybody else was something else. So the warrior was getting all the glory points, while everybody else was getting the points for doing their thing. And so the warrior was progressing really fast, and that made him real powerful there. Okay, so hunters, they can get some glory points for beasts and monsters. The creatures in this game are divided into several categories, 2 of which are beasts, which are basically normal animals, and monsters, which are everything that's not one of the other categories. And so your players for the hunters will often ask, is this a monster? And thieves get points for how much money they acquire. But these glory points for the hunters and the experience points for the thieves are not where most of their experience comes from. Most of their experience comes at 50 XP a pop for successfully using a skill. So this encourages them to use their skills a lot, because you don't know there's something to sneak past, so you just do stealth all the time. You don't know there's a trap on that door, so you check for traps constantly. Okay, so that is the end of this. Some of the other books have other classes, which I will cover in other things, but I will say I wish the Shapeshifter class were in the player's handbook and not an optional class. The Tritons is like a sea equivalent to the Centaurs. This is from the pages of the Minotaur. Dolphins are shape-shifting dolphins, which have some powers. Some of them are powers from Delirious and some of them from the Sea Nymphs. The Mariner class is an aquatic variant of Specialist. It's sort of an aquatic equivalent to the Thief, and I don't think that'd be very fun to run, but it's really useful to have one as an NPC. There was a issue about Egypt, and so it goes into some of the powers of the Egyptian gods for your priests. There was a Pancratus and Pugilist class. Basically wrestling and boxing classes. There was an issue about Charybdis and Charybdon classes. Like there was an Animus class, which is basically a variation of priest. And there's a supplement called Vikings and Valkyries, which has some interesting classes in it. Some of them are, and somebody came up with Caverns and Chimeras, which is a way to do D&D using Mazes and Minotaurs rules. Some of the classes use as is, and some you would adapt slightly. So here it goes into it. Here's the spells known per level for wizards. And there's one for elves. Here's the spell list for wizards and elves. And that is the Mazes and Minotaurs Player's Manual.